Right now we're looking at dividing fractions, and like our multiplication of fractions, the key thing we want to look at is working with our algebraic fractions, but we need a little bit of review with working with our regular dividing fractions. How do you divide an algebraic fraction? The key thing is you must always change division to multiplying by reciprocal. Always changing it to multiplying by the reciprocal is the key thing. We're going to simplify before we multiply. Then we'll multiply our numerator by numerator and denominator by denominator. If you need to pause to write this down, please do so. I'm going to give you the definition of reciprocal on the next page. And I know actually some of you probably know what a reciprocal is. If you're thinking about a reciprocal, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. We'll come back to this page and look at this. But a reciprocal is two non-zero numbers whose product is 1. When I talk about the product being 1, remember that's when we multiply two things together and it equals 1. So if you think of the number 4, you have to take it times 1/4. 4 times 1/4 is 1. There's a really cool key on your calculator, and just another name for multiplicative inverse is the reciprocal. So these two mean the same thing. If you look on your calculator and you see a key that is -1, sometimes it'll even be x to the -1, that means reciprocal. That is the reciprocal key. So that if you put in on your calculator, say you type in the number 4, and then you want to try it, you should get that reciprocal of 4 is 1/4, and that's a decimal 0.25. So if you want to try that, hit 4, x to the -1, and if you hit equals, you should get 0.25, which is the same as 1/4. What about if you hit 1/2? If you put in 1/2 on your calculator and you hit x to the -1, that's the reciprocal, you're going to get the number 2. Well, thinking about that, we want to now fill in this chart in your notes. As you're filling in this chart, I'm going to give you some different numbers to write down. We're going to write down the number 7. We're going to write down the number 2/3. We're going to look at the number 3.5. And we want to talk about the reciprocal of these. If you want to add a few more, I'm probably going to add the number -5 and -3/5. If we're looking at the reciprocal, remember, we're trying to think of what times 7 gives us 1. The reciprocal of 7 is 1/7. So now as we look at the reciprocal of 2/3, what do we take times 2/3 to get 1? Should be 3/2. 3.5 is a little trickier. The first thing you have to do with 3.5 is rewrite it as an improper fraction. So 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. This is really 7/2, and our reciprocal would be 2/7. What I would like you to do when you come into class tomorrow is I should see the reciprocal of -5, the reciprocal of -3/5, and -3/5, and the reciprocal of 1 and 1/3. So please do those 3 reciprocals for when you come into class tomorrow. Now, as we talked about that, remember, to divide a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal. You're going to see that here, and then we are going to do some examples. Notice the first number, the 3/8, nothing ever changes. That stays exactly the same. But which one do we flip? It's always behind the division, changes to multiply by the reciprocal. And then we simply multiply across, which in this case would give us 15/32. Again, algebraically, A over B divided by C over D means A divided by B times the reciprocal DC. And again, remembering that we cannot have 0 in our denominator because it's undefined, thus that definition of B, C, and D not equaling 0. Your first example that I would like you to write down is that 9/10 is divided by 3/20. The first part stays the same, 9/10. We're going to multiply by our reciprocal, so 20 divided by 3. I would always like you to rewrite the problems as you're doing this. Now at this point, I'm going to simplify. I notice 10 goes into both of these, once here and twice. I know 3 goes into 9 3 times and into 3 1. So now I can simply multiply across. 3 times 2 gives us 6/1, or simply 6. Again, here as we are looking at this, we're going to have 11/12 times our reciprocal, and we should have a negative 6 over 1. Does it matter if the negative is in the denominator or in the numerator? It doesn't matter, as long as you make sure that you notice that you're taking a positive times a negative, which means our answer will be negative. Again here, the 6 and 12, 6 goes in here once, 6 goes into 12 twice. We always want to simplify first. 11 times 1 gives us a negative 11 divided by 2. Could we rewrite that, our answer, as a negative 5.5? You could, or you can simply leave it as an improper fraction. The next example that I would like you to do is example 2. 6/11, put it right below example 1 on that same page, divided by 4. Remembering that 4 is really 1/4. So 6/11 times the reciprocal, 1/4. And again, at this point, we can simplify. 2 goes into 4 twice and into 6 3 times. 6 times 1 gives us 3 divided by 22 as our solution. Right next to example, at the very top of your 5-4 notes, I would like you to put problems 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you need to pause the video so that you can write them down and solve those problems on your own at the top for your guided practice. Again, if you need to look back at the other problems that we've just done in your examples, in example 1 and 2, take a look at those. And then you should be able to have these 3 done. Put it right above that 5-4 dividing algebraic fractions at the very top. We are going to have two more examples. We're going to have example 3 and 4. In example 3, what you're going to see is that you'll have a mixed number, 4.5 divided by negative 3 3/4. The first thing we have to do there is, again, multiply. 4 times 2, 8, plus 1, gives us 9 over 2. We need to change them to improper fractions. Divided by, again, we know it's going to be negative. And then we're looking at 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 to give us negative 15 over 4. Now, one of the most common mistakes that students will do is at this point they'll change and try simplifying as much as they can. Remember, division has to be rewritten as multiplying by the reciprocal. So we're going to change that to a negative 4/15. Again, remember, it doesn't matter if the negative's in the numerator or denominator. And at this point, we want to simplify. As I'm simplifying, 2 goes into both of these. This is going to be a negative 2 and 1. 3 goes into both 9 and 15, 3 and 5. And so now I will multiply across, and I get negative 6 divided by 5 for my solution. If we think of this answer is a negative 1 and 1/5. Again, you could use your calculator to do the check. As you're looking at these. The last example is more the algebraic, and this is where more of your homework problems will be. So those other ones are kind of practice. Right below each example, so write down example 4, this will be on the bottom of that page of notes. If you need to pause the video, please do so. We're going to do A and B together. You'll do C on your own. So if I look at this, the first thing I want to do is rewrite my problem. Negative 3x divided by 8. Changing multiplication or division to multiply, and now I'm rewriting it as 16x over 6y. As I simplify, I notice that 3 and 6 have common factors of 3. 3 goes in here twice, and this would be a negative 1. I also notice that 8 goes into 8 once and into 16 twice. So in my numerator, I have negative 1 times 2, which gives me a negative 2. X times x gives us x to the second. In my denominator, I have 1 times 2 times y, which gives me 2y. Oh, can I simplify one more time? I can. So that my final answer is actually going to be, and you can either just write negative x squared over y, or you can write it as negative 1x squared over 1y. Again, remember, it's always understood in algebra that the 1 is in front of that if it's not written. In example B, first thing we're going to do, keep the first fraction the same, 5y divided by 7x, times the reciprocal. What is our reciprocal? 14 over 15y. Oh, this is looking nice. Looks like we can do some simplifying. Again, the 7 and 14, 7 goes into 14 twice and into 7 once. They both have a y in both the numerator and denominator, so y over y is the same as 1 over 1. 5 goes into 5 once and into 15 once, or 3 times. So we are now multiplying across. I have 1 times 2 in my numerator. So 2 in my denominator, I have 1 times x times 3, which will give us 3x. 2 over 3x, and our answer is positive. There was no negatives in our solution. You're going to try question C. I will be looking at those and then the 4 guided practice questions tomorrow in class. Hope this lesson with dividing fractions made some sense. It should be reviewed from last year. Again, it will be on the employee portal, and I'll try and make sure that I have a few other questions for you to look at. Thanks, and we'll see you tomorrow.